All right, I'm gonna take you guys on a little hike with me. I heard about some neighbors of mine telling me about this cool big old maple tree that's near a lake not too far away. So I thought I'd bring you along with me to go check it out. So let's go to it. Home sweets home for the last 10 years. Yeah. In this episode, I will talk about how some of my own deeply traumatic experiences created an unconscious fear that eventually manifested in my life as anxiety. Along my journey of healing, I've been fortunate to learn valuable lessons from many beautiful teachers and healers that completely changed the trajectory of my life. In this episode, I will also share with you some of these ideas that can help change your mind and lead you down a new path towards understanding. At the end of the day, the word and label of anxiety is truly nothing more than a surface fear that is generated in the mind and body. Simply stated, anxiety is a reaction to a deep negatively conditioned pattern of energy that can be described as an overly strong attachment to the illusions of life, or alternatively, the fear of death. My aim with making this video is to plant a viable seed in your mind, which hopefully can germinate into a change of perspective and understanding so that you can begin to shift from a state of fearful reaction to one of mindful response. So let's wander down this trail, this pathway into the forest at the edge of the tranquil lake in our minds, and see what we can discover together. So if you dare, please come along with me. Come and let me help you change your mind. Okay, I think this is the tree that people are talking about. Even looking around the base of it, it's just kind of like... Yeah, that's a very, very, very large maple tree. Look at that thing. I don't know. Oh, even some of the little shoots coming off of it are massive. Look at that thing, it just goes forever. I don't know. Don't get me wrong, that tree is cool and all, but I find this one way more interesting. Way, way, way more interesting. You have the new intertwined with the old, the living and the dead, which is an interesting concept in my mind. It's pretty cool. Makes me think of life in general. Life, the illusions of life and the illusions of death. Right there, all presented as one. So yeah, I've been spending a lot of time talking about anxiety lately, and I'm always kind of thinking about it, trying to like put it into different angles of looking at it, different perspectives to try to understand it better and to help other people work their way through it. But being out here and looking at these maples, and particularly the one in the background there, the one that is there's the old dead trunk with the new growth growing around it and out of the base of it. It does make you really start to question the concept of both life and death. And what I've learned over my lifetime, the last 50 so odd years, is that both life and death are actually kind of illusions. Illusions in the fact that they're not really one thing. They're both part and parcel, one big thing. They're basically continuations of an ongoing process. And another way I like to look at this, kind of like a different perspective, is to, when you look at a big wave offshore in the sea, there's this big pattern, this big wave, but there's all these little other smaller wave patterns within the bigger pattern of the wave. Same sort of idea, like life and death are the little waves, but there's a much bigger pattern that we can't see, that we don't know because our minds are so limited. And then another way of looking at the same sort of idea is from the standpoint of time in a human lifetime made up of a bunch of days. And, you know, the human life really, if you look down at the micro level day by day, there's quite a bit of variation from one day to the next. And it's not this fixed thing. It's always changing, and it's part of this one bigger thing. And so the idea being that, you know what I mean, there's the unity as opposed to the duality of life and death or light and dark. It's all one part and parcel bits and pieces that define each other. And then it brings up the question of like, well, what if anxiety itself is just an illusion? You know, what if it's an effect produced by a deep feeling of fear that originates from that fear of death that's hammered into us all from a very young age, from the efforts of our parents and our guardians and our teachers trying to keep us safe, and they're instilling with their reactions to when we do something that they perceive as being dangerous. Then they react, and they get emotional, and they raise their voice, and creates a bit of a feeling of tension. And that kind of that combination of emotion with a very powerful voice, it really gets deep into our subconscious, where it enters the realm of beliefs. And in a lot of cases, I do feel that a lot of the root cause of anxiety actually is this kind of more like really deeply rooted sense of fear, and a fear of death that is instilled, basically programmed into us by other people. And, you know, another way to look at it is that, you know, it's like when you, in terms of sensations, you know what I mean? When we touch something that's hot, we get this sensation of pain, whatever we touch, to tell us to, like, that's not a good place to go, don't touch that, move away. Another way to think about anxiety is a combination of sensations and emotions and thoughts that are just trying to tell you in a similar fashion that you need to do something different. And of course, there's a lot more going on because it's a more complex wave. But if you could view it in that way, as a suite of sensations and feelings that are basically trying to tell you that you in the moment, you're not doing exactly what you should be. You're not following your life's purpose. You're not following what you really want to do in your heart. You're doing all of these other things that you think you should be doing because society's telling you to do these things, and you're not coming from a place of your own. You're not using your own internal compass and knowing who you are and what you want, and going out into the world and then doing that thing that really resonates with you. And I think in a lot of cases, even from my experience, the anxiety that I felt after a very long period of reflection, the anxiety that I experienced in my body and the sensations I experienced in my body, it was basically my body trying to tell me that these things that you're doing, you don't really want to be doing. And why are you doing them? Like, don't stop doing that stuff and go do something else. And so what I encourage you to do, if you're continually experiencing sensations and feelings of that anxious state of worry and like constant negative thoughts and negative thinking, try doing some stuff differently. Try to shift some things in your life. Try to focus more on the things that you're passionate about, more on the things that bring you joy. Follow the energy down a different trail that brings you more lightness and more happiness. And it may not bring you things like the rewards, financial or security and all that, but again, those are all kind of illusions related to life, the whole idea of money and ownership and all that stuff. And that's a whole other subject we can get into, because at the end of the day, if you really look around and you really honestly get to the truth of the matter, we're not our thoughts, we're not our minds, We're not our bodies. We don't really own even our bodies. It's material borrowed from the earth that houses our spirit for the duration of our life on earth. But the reality is you don't own anything in life. And so all of those like possessions and material things that a lot of our society is telling us to pursue, they actually don't have any true meaning to us, because we just don't really, you never own anything in this life. Really, all you really have, the only thing you can really be in control of is your time, your breath, your time, and what you choose to focus your mind on. And hopefully, to get a really good sense of purpose and meaning in life, you're focusing on those things that bring you value, that bring you a sense of, yes, this is who I am. This is what I'm meant to be. This is what I'm meant to be doing. This is my life's purpose. This is my soul's calling. Right? So if you're more in line with that sort of energy, that kind of flow, and like doing that thing that makes you feel really, really good inside, and then you know that you're definitely getting closer. And you should be able to, just with that alone, with shifting your belief into more in your actions, reflecting your belief, what you believe and what you know about yourself, can shift you out of that negative mindset and attitude that can lead to that feeling of anxiety within the body. And so one of the fundamental things in my life, what I found is when I started shifting my focus onto the things that brought me a lot more meaning, and that were really important to me. A great one is, for example, is sailing. I love sailing. It's one of those things that I've always wanted to do. It combines my love of the ocean with, cruising and traveling around the world as slowly as possible. But yeah, and I knew that I didn't want to be a part-time sailor or have this boat and never have time to use it. And so I made the conscious choice to buy a boat that needed a lot of work. And I moved on to it. And I've been living that way for 10 years. And it brings me a lot of joy because it's my passion. And it's very unconventional. A lot of people think I'm crazy. They tell them where I live and how I've lived for the last decade. And they're like, what? Who does that? Who does that? And then on the flip side, I have other people that are like, oh, that's amazing. That's so awesome. But that's one example for my life. And, yeah, so to go back to the whole anxiety, the conversation about anxiety, like if you can really start to think about it, think of it, the symptoms and that stress and you being over your nervous system's threshold, meaning that you're basically always switched on in an overdrive and the fight or flight response. So you're always basically like super jacked up. That's a message. That's telling you that you need to change. And especially too, other things to consider if you already are an intuitive and a very feeling and a very emotional person, a highly sensitive person. HSP is kind of like the acronym for people who have a higher than average level of sensitivity to the world around them, and tend to be emotional and kind of and respond to just daily things that most people are just like, oh, whatever. You feel them a lot more deeply. There's a big variation between all different people and our bandwidth and what we feel and how we respond and react and how we perceive the world. And there is about 15 to 20% of the population that are actually a lot more sensitive. And from my understanding as well, I kind of identify as one of those people, an intuitive kind of empathic person that's highly sensitive. And so you can't, one of the things, if you go into the world trying to live and be the way everybody else is, all the people around you, you will find yourself in various pitfalls and in trouble because of the fact that your system is a lot more sensitive and is pushed over its threshold a lot easier. So these are things to think about. And so kind of like going back to that idea of it being a message, kind of like pain and touching a hot stove. It's like, okay, well, if you touch a hot stove, you don't just leave your hand on it, right? You take your hand off. So when you're feeling anxiety, like if you can start to gain awareness by meditating primarily, writing and through meditation, slow your brainwaves down. When you start to get that anxious feeling, right, you look at the thoughts. You look at the thoughts that you're choosing to attach to and engage with. And those thoughts and those negative, whatever the negative thought is that's creating the fear and the sensations in your body that make you uncomfortable, those are the thoughts that you need to stop touching. You need to get away from those thoughts, and you need to shift your mind and your thinking patterns over onto, like I said, the stuff that makes you passionate, the stuff that brings you joy. And then if you're doing that, it is basically like taking your hand that's on the hot stove. It's like taking your mind and not touching that hot stuff, those hot thoughts that are bringing you down and feeding the cycle, the negative feedback loop that continues to energize and give power to the anxious state. Going back to the tree and the death, the illusion of life and death. I've just been doing a lot of speaking about an experience that I had when I was 29 years old, when I was out working offshore on a fishing boat, and a man that was not much older than me, I was 29 at the time, he was 38, I believe, and he basically collapsed at 5 o'clock in the morning on deck in front of me and pretty much died. And at the time it was kind of a stressful experience, but we did what we could, like we stopped our fishing activity and we did CPR on the guy for an hour. But in that through that experience, at one point, we were doing CPR in teams, and I had taken a break, and I was just standing there watching, getting the bird's eye view, standing back and looking at what was going on with the fellow on the ground who was unconscious, and the people that were frantically trying to, bring him back to life. And I distinctly remember the point at which I saw the color, the flush of color, the color of life leave the man's face. It was the moment when a man basically became a body again, and a body that was ready to go back to the earth from which it came, and that it didn't change my life in a crazy dramatic way, but it definitely made an impact. Just seeing that, and it made me really start to think about, what is a human life and what is death? Going way back when I was studying biology in university, I remember in first year, like in the textbook, there's all this information that you have to study and you have to memorize. And I remember one of the basic tenets, one of the founding principles in biology, they were talking about these things in the world called biotic factors and abiotic factors. And so like there's the factors, the part of the world that's alive, and there's the things that are abiotic or dead. So like you have like minerals and water and stuff like that, and light, and all of these things that aren't technically alive, and they can't really be, if you isolate them if you look at them by themselves, there's no living quality to them. And then you have things like plants and animals and fungi and bacteria that obviously all are animated, right? And it never sat well with me. I was always just like, no, that doesn't seem right, because if you actually start breaking everything down, it's like all of the components that come into life. Like if you actually look at, so like minerals, the minerals come from rocks, but originally they came from somewhere deep in the earth. They got thrust up in this process, and then over eons, over millions of years, worn down by erosion, and dissolved out into carbonates or whatever, any kind of other salts and minerals into the water, and then is absorbed into plants or into other microscopic animals in the ocean. And if you actually start looking at the whole thing, if you look at it as all one and stop breaking it down into its little pieces, you see that all of this behind me, all of this on my body and everything around me, including the air that's breathing, that's coming into my lungs, that actually allows me to live, it's all one thing. And what I realize, and where I'm going with all of this, is that the fact that we start dividing and chopping stuff up in our minds in order so that we can can have knowledge and kind of like understand from the thought part of our mind, it really breaks up and creates this illusion of separation where we feel that we're this separate animal, this human being that's separate from all of this, but actually none of this exists without us being here. So we have to be part of it and creating it, because if you think about it, like that guy on the deck of the boat that all of a sudden went from being a man to a body, his consciousness was gone, and so none of this then existed for him, right? Anything that was part of him was the body, which was going back to the earth, but then none of this, any perception of this, is instantly gone. So it just, my point and where I'm going with all this is that one of the things that we do in Western society and as individuals within that society is we learn all these things, how to chop and divide things up, like trees and species and plants and grass and air and earth. But really fundamentally, it's all one big thing, one part of one big giant unfolding process, which is the universe, which is life. It's a process, is what I'm basically trying to say. It's a process. And so coming all the way back to anxiety, one of the things that feeds the anxiety is this idea and this concept that like we think that we are this separate thing, and we go acting in the world, separating ourselves from the reality, but we forget what we really all should know is that we are spirits. We have a soul and a spirit that is animating this body, and that part of us is eternal. It can never die. It can never die. It's that when your soul or your spirit leaves this body, it goes somewhere and the life continues. So all of this, both your life as a human and your death, the one thing in life that's guaranteed to happen to you is you're going to die. You're going to lose all of this and everything. Anything that you think you own, including your body, including your mind, including your feelings, all of that is going to disappear. But you will go on. And so my message to you with all of this rambling roundabout little whatever it is that I'm getting into here, what I'm trying to tell you is that the fear of death, that could be fueling your anxiety and maybe like preventing you from doing that thing that you really want to do with your life, that you know deep down, is that it's all an illusion. So just let it go. There's no need to fear death. There absolutely is not. And every time you get anxious, you have that anxious feeling, you feel agitated, you feel something coming up through your body, don't start running around and doing other things and getting all scattered. Sit down with that feeling, let it come up, because it may be something, it could be an old deep part of you, an old emotional trauma or something that you're storing in your body. It may simply be something that's trying to come up and be released. And by running away from it or distracting yourself, you're actually not allowing the process to happen. And it might feel uncomfortable. It might actually be painful. But if you let it come up and just let it and just sit with it and just watch it, then you give yourself an opportunity to actually see what's happening and potentially to let it rise up so that you get emotional, which means you may cry, you may feel uncomfortable, you may feel sad, you may feel grief, you may feel fear, but by feeling it, you get it up, you get it out, and you release it. You release it in the tears from crying. You release it in whatever it is that the pain that you feel in your body, it's working its way out. And so I'm not going to go too much further with this one. I feel like I've gone on this crazy roller coaster ride and brought you along with me. But again, to go full circle, to go back to the tree, back to what appears to be the dead tree with other living trees emerging from it. There is no life and death. It is all one thing. We are all one thing. We are part of this unified, beautiful thing that is the universe that is unfolding. And also within that, we are a creative force. So you have all these gifts. You have the gift of Brahma in you. And so my message here is multiple. There's multiple things here for you to think about. Let go of the illusion of death and your fear of it. Your life, it's an illusion, but embrace it. Embrace the time, the limited time you have. It's the most precious thing, time in your breath. And go after. Chase that thing. Put your energy and your focus into that thing that really brings you up, that brings you joy, that brings you energy, that gives you passion. Because at the end of the day, like, what else would you rather do with your time? your limited time in this crazy, beautiful experience of life on Earth in as a human. So if any of the ideas that I've discussed here today resonate with you, feel free to leave a comment below or check out the website at www.changeyourmind.life for lots of other cool ideas, tools, and resources. And for those of you that are suffering from anxiety and depression and you feel that you don't have purpose and meaning in your life, I'm in the midst of creating a course specifically for helping people dig in to their spirit, their beliefs, their spiritual side, the spiritual side of their being, with a main goal and purpose of uncovering what it is that you're really here to do, finding your purpose and bringing meaning and value to your life. So I really look forward to working on that and making it available soon. You're more than welcome to sign up to the waitlist. So yeah, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I look forward to seeing you guys again soon. Bye.